Mark Steyn on the EIB network in for Rush. Rush is back Monday, 1-800-282-2882. Arian in Los Angeles, thanks for waiting. You're on the air at the EIB network. Happy
Top of the morning to you, Mark.
Yep, top of the morning to you. Top of the morning to you, Big Ara.
Yeah, listen, I want to ask you something. Now, before I tell you my point, I want to make sure I don't make any assumptions here. I assume at one point you believed, or still do believe, or believe whatever, yes, that if democracy came to Iraq, it might spread throughout the region, yes?
I don't use the word democracy. I do use the word liberty. Liberty, okay. Liberty.
Fair enough. And by the way, that is a fair argument. I hope you're right. And I think maybe if democracy is in the Middle East, that might be better. Maybe, yes. Here's what I don't understand, though. A lot of people who come up with this argument either don't know or care or realize there is a democratic country right in that region. It's right by Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, not that far from Iraq, and not that far from Saudi Arabia, the world's largest democracy, and in my opinion, a legit democracy. Do you know which democratic country I'm talking about?
Are you talking about India?
Yes. So here's my question to you. I have two questions, at least for now. Number one, is it fair to say democracy really hasn't spread from India throughout the rest of the region as much as some of us would like it to?
Well, the interesting thing is democracy doesn't spread in that
liberty. I'm sorry.
In that sense. One way to look at it is imagine the British invested a lot of time in India in building the bulwark of democracy. If India had been like the Middle East, if it hadn't had the British rule up to 1948, it would look like the Arabian Peninsula does today. It would be a sort of crazy quilt of kleptocrat
no, that's not fair.
sultans and various psychotic dictatorships.
Well, hold on. That's not fair. I hope this doesn't come into a new sub-argument. You know, I'm an Indian guy. My parents from India.
I'm not.
India.
No, but I'm...
Listen, hear me out.
Yeah.
India, you have to go by its history. You could be right. Maybe it would be like the Arabian Peninsula, yes. But you can judge a country by its history. And throughout India's long and tragic history, there have been plenty of times where people of all faiths can live in this country, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, whatever, and live in relative peace. There have been times where there have been violence.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that far to say it would be like the Arabian Peninsula. But
no.
When I called you, I wanted to ask you...
But just to deal with that point, I think that one of the conditions for real democracy, by democracy, I never mean holding an election, you fly in Jimmy Carter and the UN observers, they say the election is free and fair, and they fly out, and the next day the guy gets back to killing all his enemies.
No, I understand.
What I mean is the conditions for liberty, by which I think you need enforceable property rights, you need a justice system, you need a mercantile middle class. India has all those things. I take your point that it has a different history from the Middle East, but a lot of those things were not present in its tradition. But you know, I'm not arguing about the benefits of British colonialism, because the British had the Middle East too. The British invented Jordan and Iraq, and they botched the job. So these things can go either way.
Yeah, forgive me for trying to cut you off. I just don't know how much time I have as a caller. So
have your second point.
Okay. I just have two simple questions. I assume, number one, you agree that in the last few decades, democracy, liberty, whatever, yes, really hasn't spread from India as much as some of us would like it to throughout the rest of the Middle East, right?
No, it certainly hasn't spread.
Okay, now here's my basic question I want to ask you. If democracy really, or liberty, or whatever, yes, hasn't really spread from India throughout the rest of the region as some of us would like it to, why do you think it'll spread from Iraq if it hasn't spread from India?
Well, I don't, as I said, I don't believe it does spread. It's a difficult thing to grow genuinely free societies in arid soil where they have never been known is one of the hardest tasks ever. If you look at the history of the European empires, they went all over the world. They came to the Americas. They went to Africa. They went to Australia and the Pacific. They all sailed around the Middle East. They understood that the Arab world was a tough nut to crack. And by the time the European empires got their hands on the Middle East after the First World War, they were too exhausted to do anything with it. Hence the botched creation of states like Syria and Iraq.
There's a problem with that argument. I'll tell you what the problem is. You are right that certain soils in that region, in general, have not had democracy. Yes, but you use the word Arab. there are plenty of countries in that region which I assume you want democracy to go to. They're not Arab countries like Pakistan, like Afghanistan, like Iran. And these are countries that have a history in that region of being linked to India and have lived in peace at times.
Yes.
So it can happen at some point.
No, I think Iran. I think if you look at Iran, I think Pakistan. The creation of Pakistan was a disaster, and it has got worse over 60 years. Iran was in many ways, under the Shah, a flawed society, but one that was showing signs of in which Islam had reached an accommodation with modernity. You can't, democracy doesn't spread. It's not like some Eurasian milfoil in a pond that it just takes it over. You have to do the hard work of seeding it. And that doesn't come naturally to the United States, because the United States is a country that takes the view that if free men want to live in freedom, they will choose it for themselves. Sometimes it isn't as obvious as that.
I'm confused about something, because that's why when I called your show, I asked you if democracy, or as you said, liberty, can spread. And you kind of implied that, I hope you don't think I'm fighting with you, but you kind of implied that you think it can spread or go from Iraq. But now you're saying that you don't think of it as spreading.
No, I don't. I think you build it. Iraq is the least worst state in that part of the world. Jordan, which again is one of the more benign Arab states, nevertheless has a deformed political culture. And the trouble is that part of the world was allowed to marinate in its pathologies, and by the time of September 11th was exported